So the man that Hester, the indentured servant, was, married to, what was he a slave when she married him, or was he a free person?
I've heard conflicting stories, and I've read. One record, free man, one record, a slave. Further research is due on that.
So that's your mother's father.
William Henry Tate was my mother's father.
And your mother's mother, do you know how her family, what year they came over from?
Really, I haven't done anything with the Starks family. I chose to do just my grandfather's line because I thought it would be easier than trying to do both sides. And I'm hoping that some of the young people in the family, including my grandchildren, might pick up and continue on, with the research and include Grandma and her people. But it was going to be too much, I could tell, for me to do both of them.
So can you talk about a little bit more of the information that you found out about the Tate family?
I do know that some of the family left this area in 1867, and horse and wagon went to Michigan. Took them 3 weeks to travel from this part of the country up to Michigan, where they cleared the woods and had property up there. There was this Homestead Act going on at the time, and they were able to have some property awarded to them, given to them if they would clear the land and so forth. So several of the Tate men distinguished themselves as farmers and became, took good care of themselves and their families through the work that they did on the farms. Hardworking people, it appeared. There's some who became educated.
Can I close
The window?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Also, if you could clip your microphone a little closer to your higher up.
Oh, I'll clip it to the red part, maybe, because that will help
then we'll get-
diffuse
yeah.
the
Right here.
lawnmower sound.
That door.
Okay,
Okay,
we're ready.
so we're talking about the Tates.
Okay. What I'm finding so far, they were property owners both in Zanesville and in Michigan. One woman in particular, Mers Tate, had distinguished herself in this country as quite the educator, the college professor, the writer of books, truly known in Black history, especially in Michigan, for her accomplishments. She just died in 1996 at the age of 95. Had I started the research earlier, I would have met her. She was my father's grandfather's great niece. But it does appear. And then I have found a couple of pieces of property here that that the Tate men bought and sold. And one is just in this neighborhood, which is surprising.
Now, do you know when some of the family left for Michigan? Approximately what time?
About 1865, 1867, the war, Civil War had been over a couple of years. When they went further west into Michigan. Several are buried there. In fact, I plan to make that trip there this summer because they have a reunion called the Old Settlers Reunion the third weekend of August every year. I had never attended that, didn't even know anything about it until I came home and started working on this. But a fellow, 79 years old, has agreed to take me to the places where some of my relatives and his, we are connected, are buried.
Now, what made your father's side of the family stay in Ohio? Do you know why they stayed and the others went to Michigan?
No. I have no idea. why they did that. And why Michigan? You know, I don't know why they did that. Unless I can't imagine them wanting desperately to travel over this hilly if it was all like what was down in Meigs County. Can you imagine? The hills and the dales.
Now, growing up, did your family ever talk about their history?
Never. Never.
No, why do you think that is?
I don't know. I have theories. Maybe for some it was painful. Maybe they didn't know. Like my grandfather never knew his grandfather. He did know about his father because he said to me, when you were born, I asked your mother if I could name you after my mother, who was Margaret Ann Williams Tate. And my mother gave her permission for him to name me that. And I have a picture of his mother. He couldn't have known his grandfather because his grandfather was dead sometime between 1853 and 1857. My grandfather was born in 1872. No, he didn't talk. That's the only time I ever heard him mention anybody in his family, and that was his mother.
So how did you start learning about your history, or how have you uncovered, this?
I started in St. Louis, and I thought, and I picked my grandfather. Well, I didn't want to do both of them. I knew it was going to be too much. But I think about him when I think about baseball and how we would go to baseball games together. And I thought, I'd like to know more about this man, this kindly old gentleman. It doesn't matter that there's some connections to the great Benjamin Banneker that I'm being told, and he was just a good man and a kind man, and I liked him a lot. So I said, I'll see what I can find out about my grandpa. I went to a workshop headed by Tony Burroughs, who's one of the country's foremost genealogists, who happens to be black and out of Chicago, but he came to St. Louis. And he really got me interested. He was funny, and the way he talked about our people. And I thought, okay, I'm going to do this. I'm going to go home, and I'm going to do this. And here I am.
Now, what kind of stories did the older people talk about when growing up then, if they didn't talk about the family history?
Don't remember any stories. Don't remember stories of their childhoods. Don't remember stories about where their people lived. And my grandmother, I think my grandmother came up at a time when grandmas weren't like they are today, all over the grandkids and lovey, kissy. She was kind of a stern woman, a kind woman. But I couldn't say she was a loving, hands-on, touchy-feely woman. And you just didn't ask her certain questions, and you know, and she didn't share anything. That's just the way it was.
So growing up, did you hear about slavery, or your family?
School, there was no black history in our schools. They did not teach about our history at all. The family told very little. But I was a person who liked to read. There weren't a whole lot of books on slavery, not in the Zanesville library. But I had a thirst for knowledge about our people. And, it was always embarrassing to say slave. If somebody would say our people were slaves, that just always was kind of embarrassing to me. And I didn't know if I wanted to be associated with slaves. Movies depicted blacks as in a very demeaning way, and very often in a slave role. And I thought, how horrible. How horrible. And it was embarrassing, too, the way they talked, the way they looked. But when I got older and understood what was happening, then I became more proud of what our people have gone through. But no, they didn't talk about it.
So how did you find out about your family's connection to this white indentured servant? How did you go about it?
Actually, that information was shared with me from a woman I met from South Carolina who happened to have Tates in her ancestry. And I met her through the genealogist here in Zanesville who put me in touch with her. And we've been corresponding for about 1.5 years now, and I actually met her this summer, not too long ago, down in Charlotte, North Carolina, and she's coming to Zanesville. So we were working on some of the same information, but she found this information in Maryland, where she lived before going to South Carolina, and shared that with me.
Now, what are the Tate's connection to the Lett settlement?
To the settlement, one of the Tate men married Margaret Lett, who was the daughter of Aquila Lett there in the settlement, and they moved on that settlement. That's the only Tate that I know, and that would be my grandfather's son, Joseph, who married Margaret. I don't know of any other Tates who were down there, even though his grandfather, the 1850 census, shows him living in Meigs Township, but not necessarily in that settlement. So I have to find out, well, where did he live down there?
Sorry. Were you able to find out what plantation the Tates came from, or where the woman was indentured?
Hester?
Yes.
Back in 16? No. I don't know that. I don't know that that information has even been shared with me, or if she lived on a plantation. You know, we're talking shortly after the Puritans all arrived here and set up on the New England coast.
So where was she indentured? Do you know what state she was indentured in?
I'm going to say Maryland, but that's going to have to be verified. I'll ask that question to see if my friend has that information. We've not talked about that.
Growing up, did you ever hear about the Underground Railroad?
Not growing up. When I got older and began to read on my own, found out about the Underground Railroad and Harriet and all of her passengers.
You talked a little bit about the civil rights movement earlier. What would you say were some of the successes of the civil rights movement?
I suppose the integration of public facilities, housing, an awareness that blacks exist as real people and not chattel mortgage. The great contributions our people have made to science, mathematics, education, astronomy, inventions that were never mentioned before, and awareness.
What were some of its failures?
Of the civil rights movement, I don't really think of failures that existed there. I don't know that it has changed all attitudes of people for the better. I can't think of anything that was really a failure anytime you're trying to bring about some kind of change for the positive, whether it works or not, I don't see it as a failure.
And just a last couple of questions. Growing up, what kinds of illnesses did family members experience?
Mostly respiratory, and that has been a pattern in our family. Respiratory, allergy, and it still goes on. I don't know what my grandmother died of, and that was not shared. I don't know what my grandpa died of. That was not shared. And I dare not ask. My mother lived to be 96 years old. I don't remember her taking an aspirin. I don't remember her ever being in a hospital. She had a slight stroke, gone. Never suffered a day in her life. That's a good thing. Reading physicians' reports of the deaths of my people, mostly having to do with the respiratory. Could be either heart, something like that. By the way, I did forget to mention to you that in 1903, my grandmother gave birth to quads.
Oh, quadruplets?
And that made headlines in the Zanesville paper. Quadruplets. And one lived to, 3 of them died very young, 1 day later, 4 days, so 14 days. And one lived to be in her 50s. And that was big news then. They just failed to survive. That was the physicians. You know.
What did the headlines say? Have you seen the actual?
About, well, I have it about unusual thing happened in the William Tate family. Quadruplets come to the William Tate family. And they kept an account of when the others died. And Grandma and Grandpa had named all of them. But it's interesting, they couldn't afford to bury them. And they put them in a pauper cemetery out in Woodlawn. That's what the cemetery records say. So that was big news. They never talked about it. Never talked about it. I did not hear that from any of my people.
How did you learn about it then?
Doing this research.
So they never talked about having quadruplets?
No.
Um,
A tight-mouthed bunch of people.
how about colds and when you got colds and flus, how were those treated?
They just wore off. No big deal was made out of colds. You know, they had some, my mother had some old-time not recipes, but remedies, rub with mustard or whatever.
Do you remember?
We were not a sickly bunch coming up. Now that I think about it, my sister had tonsillitis one time. But it's measles. I remember when we would get measles or chicken pox, we would be quarantined in the house, and they put a sign on the door, quarantine, which meant you couldn't come out. People couldn't come in. I remember that.
Do you remember any of the other home remedies she would use when you guys were sick besides the mustard oil?
Mustard oil was big with her, and Vicks salve became. She didn't believe in all these medications. Not that there were a great many of them out at that time anyway. You just had to get better. I mean, just get better. I mean, there's not a lot of sympathy and, oh, I'm just so sorry. None of that stuff we do today, especially with my grandkids. You know, I make a big deal out of them when they sneeze. Well, not so with us. Just go on in your room and get better. I don't know if we'd all died. What she would have done.
What kinds of health care were available in the communities? How often did you guys see doctors, and in what circumstances would you see?
I remember an old Dr. Bateman, big, tall, white guy, who walked around with a black suit and carrying a black bag. He would treat us for tonsils. We had our tonsils out. Seemed like that was sort of routine. And the treat was ice cream one time. And I don't remember us being sickly kids. I really don't.
Now, how about diabetes in your family? Is that?
I don't know of any.
No.
I'm not aware of any diabetes. But here again, remember, this is a family that does not share a lot as far as illnesses. Now, I've got my 2 older sisters right now. Now, if they had diabetes, I wouldn't know about it because they would not come and say, look, I was diagnosed with diabetes. You just keep going. And that's pretty much the way our family is.
But it sounds like you guys don't talk about it and you live a lot longer than a lot of them.
No wimpy women, no weak women in the family. You just, if I can fix you a dinner, I'll come over and fix you a dinner. If I can go pay your bills for you, I'll do that. But there was none of this sitting around feeling sorry for yourself. That's just the way, and it's that way today. And I'm not that way with my kids and my grandkids. But, you know, it's just a difference in families.
Is there anything that you'd like to share that I haven't asked you?
Now, you asked me quite a bit. I wish I could have answered all of them. No, I'm glad to be back home. You know, coming from a large city and coming back to Zanesville has been good for me. Zanesville is my roots. I'm meeting people that I knew years ago, but we have a different relationship now. Finding out about my family so much has happened to me, and I've met so many people from across this country who are related to the Tates, who have called me, and they're just happy to be able to share. It's more than I expected. It's a more peaceful, now that I'm older and away from the city and the high crime and so forth, although I miss some of the activities in a city, I'm enjoying it. I'm enjoying. I always have a special place for Ohio University. It was at that place, even though there was things going on in Zanesville, there were things going on that suggested blacks and whites were not equal. That was my first encounter with racism when I was asked to leave the dormitory room, and I said no. And that girl and I became friends, still correspond. And we talk about, wasn't that ignorant? Wouldn't you love to go back to Ohio University and get that dorm assistant and whomever put her up to tell you what, you know, we talk about that. But yeah, I felt I got a good education at Ohio University. In 1968, I drove from, have you ever driven from Zanesville to Ohio University? Down through Gloucester and Renville and those places?
No.
I drove it every day until I got my degree in the summer of '68. The twisting roads down through there.
I've been through Gloucester, but not the rest of the way out.
Oh, it's just all Renville and all those, just down and down. Like being down in Meigs Township. The roads were curvy and they were strip mining that area too. But once I was on the campus, you know, I admired some of my instructors. Some, you know, like everybody else, didn't care, made no impression one way or the other, just did what I had to do.
So you were enrolled here in OU Zanesville, but you had to take some classes down at Athens?
On campus, they required it. It was a requirement. Well, and I had to also live there. You had to have at least one semester of residency on that campus. So that's when I lived in the dorm, 64. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Oh, so that's when the resident advisor thing happened?
Yeah, that was in 1964. Yeah.
At OU Athens?
Yeah, that was in Athens.
Oh, I thought it was here in Zanesville.
No, this was down in Athens.
Oh, with the resident advisor. Oh, now, do you remember other people of color living in the dorms when you were in the dorms in '64?
Mm-hmm. Anita Jackson lived next to me. I mean, there were 2 dorms down there, sort of like down in the valley. I remember coming off the hill and going down. She lived in the one across from me. Oh, yeah, there were others. Not from Zanesville, Cleveland and Youngstown, Ohio.
And you said you were a few years older than that.
Well, see, I'd already taught. I'd been to California and back. And I got my semester in down there. I came back here and taught to Zanesville. And then went to St. Louis in '68. So, no, this happened down at OU, Athens.
Oh. Do you remember what dorm you lived in?
If you name 2 dorms down there, women's dorms,
Not Lindley.
name another one.
Oh, that's the only one I know. Because a lot of the
Lindley.
Lindley is the big
The brick building?
Yeah.
No, it wasn't Lindley, because we went over to that building for meals.
Oh.
But it was down there, unless they've torn it down. It was a smaller dorm.
I can't think
So
of
it was down the hill?
Mm-hmm. Because to go to class, you used to have to go up the hill, and there were some steps going up.
Okay, you know where Chubb Hall used to be the library when you went
Yes,
to school, right?
yes.
Chubb Hall was the library. So where was your dorm room relationship to Chubb Hall?
Now, was Chubb just kind of on the hill going up to the main campus? Or
Chubb is on Court Street, the main drag.
no?
And then Lindley's right across from there.
Then if this was Lindley, here was the dorm I was in. It's a much smaller dorm. If Lindley is the one I'm thinking about.
All those other dorms are down there now. What was that? A dorm back then?
Lindley?
No, down the hill.
Yeah, but I'm
Towards
trying
the
to...
river, towards the Hocking?
Yeah, toward the Hocking. I can't think of the name of that dorm. I've tried to bring that up in my mind. But yeah, that's where it was.
Oh, okay.
It was not the best of dorms. I mean, it was okay. It was integrated. But Lindley was pretty nice. I remember that was a pretty nice hall. Yeah, I know that we had meals over there. We had to go over there to eat.
Because I know some of the people of color were in that dorm and stayed. Mrs. Adams. She's like, you guys are probably there the same years. I'm thinking.
What's Miss Adams' first name?
Her maiden name would have been Woodson, Ada Woodson.
Oh, Ada Woodson from down in Athens.
Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
you know her?
No, I don't know her, but I've read her book of that she
Oh.
has done some work with African Americans in that Athens County.
Yeah, she lived in Lindley. She actually lived, well, African American Studies is now in Lindley, and Lindley's no longer a dorm. And our copy room is actually her dorm room.
I'll be well, if you came out of Lindley, what dorm would you go into?
There's no dorms around there anymore.
Oh, well, then
That's
it may
why.
be gone.
Yeah,
It may be
there's no-
gone over
Or
there.
they turned a lot of the dorms into, like,
Something else.
offices,
Oh,
so
yeah.
I can't think of, like,
I'm going to ask Anita because, she and Jerry were down there when I was down there.
he's a big basketball.
Oh, yeah, of course, that interested me. Here's a guy that's got drafted by the NBA. Detroit.
Pistons?
Mm-hmm.
But they weren't the Pistons back then.
I was trying to think what they were. Detroit something. They were the Pistons.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I just saw Jerry. I hadn't seen him since I've been back. I just saw him about 2 weeks ago. But yeah, I'm going to try to go in some of my old Ohio University stuff. I was reading while in St. Louis, trouble on the campus down there. What's going on with Ohio University? They had any kind of disturbances down there?
What kind of? We've had a lot of stuff lately.
Policies, some protesting.
Oh, about the president?
Maybe
Regarding
so.
the
Is he a
president?
black guy?
Mm-hmm.
Where's he from?
He was actually the president at VCU, but he's from here. He attended OU probably the same time.
Yeah, now
McDavis.
Yeah, when I saw that name, I said McDavis at
Yeah,
Ohio.
he's probably here when you were here. Yeah, because he's from around that same period too. Because when did they approach?
So what is it they don't like? They don't like policies that.
Got some sports programs, like some fringe sports programs, and the students that were in the programs were of course upset because their scholarships got cut.
Scholarship.
So they were complaining, and then that led to a larger complaint. And then since most of those students in these fringe programs were white, then the
Oh yeah.
racial issues started to come up.
Yeah, I thought the race was involved somehow. Is he
Yeah.
still there?
Yeah, he's still there. He has 4 years. The board of trustees is still in support of him,
Mm-hmm.
but the student body voted no confidence.
What's the ratio of blacks to whites at OU now, down there?
I have no idea. I know it's lower than 12%.
Yeah.
It's lower than the
I think
population.
there's almost as many Africans as there are African
Yeah,
Americans.
Oh, yeah.
international students.
Oh, they like the international students on the
Yeah.
campuses. They're
Yeah.
first of all, they're very bright and
They bring in lots of money.
they bring in a lot of money. That's the main thing if you have the money.
Yeah, good.
Yeah.